And this is going back to something you said in your first video, which I wanted to touch on, rational. Anybody who cannot wear a uniform, they're going to have issues adapting into a society where they might have to wear a uniform later on in life. Now, I know I think I'm real did a great argument because sometimes uniforms aren't productive. Sometimes nobody in that school wants those uniforms. Sometimes they feel like it's infringing upon their individuality, and it's just become a distraction. But at the same time, for the people that are wearing their uniform, it teaches them discipline. It teaches them to clean their clothing and to wear their uniform when they go to school. And it helps prepare them for when they end up going to work, when they end up getting a job. The actual purpose of school isn't to educate you. It's to get you ready for real life, to make you integratable into society. It is more in our nature when we see food, if we have not been introduced to civilized society, to fight, to steal, to kill for our food, our shelter, water. It's only because of culture and social Darwinism we have evolved into a more peaceful race over time. When you're an adult, if you don't like the place you live, you can change. When you don't like the place you work at, you can change your job. When you're a kid, you're around a bunch of other immature people that you're forced to be around, and you might not like necessarily all of them. Codes of conduct help peacefully manage a collective organization to get rid of certain bullshit. As well, there's a whole he said, she said bullshit. Bill calls John a Bill calls John a dead dog. You better sleep with one eye open. Bill can say that it was a joke. John could say that it wasn't a joke. And it gets rid of the whole he said, she said bullshit. And kids are trying to prove each other to other men. Kids are trying to prove each other to girls. Boys are trying to prove themselves to girls. Girls are trying to prove themselves to girls. Girls are trying to prove themselves to boys. Things are clashing. And on top of that, kids often fight out differences more so than adults. Anyway, so closing statements. SJWs make arguments based off feelings and emotional manipulation. So they try to manipulate things. SJWs try to ban things because of their feelings rather than a collective rational reason that is fair and for the benefit of the organization, institution, or business. So, if a business says, okay, you know what, how about we don't say N-word in a customer service place, in the mall? How about we don't call white people honkies, Maybe that's a good idea. How about we fire people that say racist shit when we're in front of the public? It's fair, it's rational, it's reasonable, and it works towards a collective goal. If kids are constantly getting distracted by other kids picking on the other kids, they'll probably end up fighting each other or just distract each other from school. Or sometimes, it could be distracted for teachers, like I've said before. Number 3. Kids will be kids. You can baby kids. Kids aren't adults. You're not going to treat them with the same liberties you do adults. Kids don't go out and vote for the next president for a reason, Kids don't always rationally think like adults. And if people don't like these code of conducts, well, then you can homeschool your kids, or there will be a new demand. If Mr. Prager's utopia of every institution having a code of conduct that he prefers, there will emerge a new market for schools that allow you to dress however you want. And those might be a minority, but it's not the state's job to make sure kids can dress however they want and kids can act however they want when inside of an institution that has a collective goal.
I spend a lot of time on YouTube attacking extreme leftists and deconstructing their terrible ideas. But what I have found is that my distaste for social justice warriors stems primarily from their behaviors, not just from their ideas. And language policing is one of those detestable behaviors, Dennis. Congratulations, you just earned the title of right-wing SJW. But there are implications beyond the stark irony of Dennis Prager wanting to control the speech of his hypothetical American high school students like some kind of hysterical intersectional feminist. I think that Prager and I agreed that educating the American student body is pivotal to the continued success of this country. How then are we supposed to explore some of the most important pieces of American literature if, in Dennis Prager's wishful America, obscene language won't be tolerated?
Since Mr. Prager doesn't really go into detail, I just wanted to say I've been in schools where you couldn't say certain words casually or aggressively. However, we were able to still say the N-word when it came to reading books in English class. So Mr. Prager's style is short, simple, to the point.
Huckleberry Finn, The Great Gatsby, 1984, Brave New World. These are some of the most important pieces of literature in history, and they are laced with profanity, graphic sex, extreme violence, and about 219 instances of the word. So Prager, I think I prefer the obscenities over your manufactured wishful purity.
Freedoms contradict each other. Your freedom of speech contradicts freedom of association. Freedom to work under any circumstance you want can contradict someone else's freedom to work in whatever situation. If I can allow and employ anybody I want for any wage, any situation, I could basically become a slave owner and take away someone else's freedoms. Every freedom contradicts each other. We don't call our employers SJWs for policing language in their institutions. We don't call our parents SJWs for doing it to children. And we do not call our teachers SJWs for telling another kid not to use profanity or for telling a kid to shut the up. It is an institution, it is a business, it is an organization, they have a collective goal. And if kids are distracting from that collective goal, well, that's how we reinforce culture in a positive manner without creating laws that infringe upon individual liberty and rights.
It is my intent that by the time you leave this school, you will be among the few your age to distinguish between the elevated and the degraded, the holy and the obscene.
The holy and the obscene. So we're going to have to be distinguishing based on your view of what is elevated and what is degraded. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people might disagree with you on that. And since you're a Christian, I might imagine that your views would seep into this. I mean, you're not allowing to have anything to do with race, sexual orientation, ethnicity, but for some reason it seems like you're totally okay with adding your religion into this.
First off, I would like to say Otterface did correct herself when I pointed out to her that she got Mr. Prager's religion wrong. Mr. Prager is actually Jewish, not a Christian. However, though, she does make an assumption that he's putting his religious beliefs into this, or wants to put his religious beliefs into this, when he really hasn't mentioned religion at all. And what I think he means holy, meaning just good in general, just, considered moral according to the average American's views of morality. Maybe his religion would influence what he thinks would be good a bit, but I don't think it's going to be anything outrageous. Now, you see, Otterface, just because someone says holy and obscene doesn't necessarily mean that they want to have no sex ed, only teach religion, and nothing about science. You're presuming that he will do something that you would see in maybe the very religious portions of the United States or in other countries. You're making a big assumption, because unless you know him personally or have read up a lot about him, you can't make an assumption just like that. Now, maybe you've had experiences like that with people who are religious, but not everyone who's religious is like that. Some religious people are deists, like myself. I'm a deist. I believe schools should teach sex ed, science, evolution, Big Bang Theory, all of that stuff. What about you, Unpopular?
Very short and simple point to Otterface. I've read self-development books. I was in sales, so I read this book called from John C. Maxwell called Developing the Leader Within You. And this book from John C. Maxwell. John C. Maxwell's a pastor, and he took everything he learned from religion, from his culture, and he was able to word it in a way that would speak to individuals who are not religious. And I was advised another book that I read, self-development material, John Eldridge, Wild at Heart. And this book was almost like religious propaganda, almost. I don't think he meant it to be that way, but he kept quoting verses from the Bible. And to some extent, if you did not read the Holy Bible, you aren't really learning as much. Basically, what I'm trying to say is some people understand to translate what they've learned from religion, and some people almost use the religious terms such as holy and unholy as slang. So I think what Mr. Prager is doing right here, right now, and I don't blame you, Otterface, for getting confused by this, is he's using his religious terms as just general speech and just general slang almost. He's just referring to what is generally good. Some Christians know how to word things to connect to people that are not Christians. Some Christians are so wrapped up into their own ego that they cannot see that what they're creating and what they are saying draws a disconnect towards anyone who is not religious.
Secondly, I think a lot of students can typically distinguish between the elevated and the degraded, or maybe I've just had some decent education that made me understand this distinction.
Have you seen kids? They're brats. At that age, kids are really not that good. They do some things to their fellow students. Now, obviously not all are horrible kids, but there is quite a number. Now, maybe this is just a teenager's thing, but it's still good to teach them what is good and what is wrong, what is accepted in society and what is not. The whole point is get them to be prepared for life outside of school, because once they go into the workforce, it's a whole different situation. Anyways, that's going to be it for today. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe, share it, comment down below, and tell me what you thought. Follow me on all my social media. That includes Facebook, Gab, Twitter, Minds.com, VidMe, Tumblr, and BitChute. Oh, and also support me on Patreon as well. And don't forget to subscribe to Unpopular. The link to his channel will be in the links down below. And I also will link his Minds and his Gab. Well, that's it for part 2 of the 3-part series, Skeptic School. I'll see y'all later.